Imagine relying on a dozen different software programs to run your business, none of which are connected, and each one more expensive and more complicated than the last. It can be pretty stressful. Now, imagine Odoo. Odoo has all the programs you'll ever need, and they're all connected on one platform. Doesn't Odoo sound amazing? Let Odoo harmonize your business with simple, efficient software that can handle everything for a fraction of the price. Sign up today at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
Hey, folks, and welcome to Typology, the show on which we explore not only the mystery of the human personality, but the human adventure through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner, your producer and co-host. So happy to have you here, folks. We've got another great podcast for you. This one is really, I love how vulnerable, like beyond transparent, how vulnerable these two are. A married couple, Chris and Julie Bennett. He's a 9-wing 1 and she is an 8-wing 7. Their vulnerability, the way they come to the table, it's so refreshing. I love when people are even wrestling with real issues in real time for all of you, because I think everyone benefits when we come to the table like that. Hey, listen, they are the authors of Fighting for Family, the Relentless Pursuit of Building Belonging. And they also have a great podcast that they host, Becoming Family Podcast. I know you're going to love this episode. Again, he's a 9, she's an 8. And of course, we're much more than numbers. And you find out that on this very episode. So without any further ado, that's it for me, Anthony Skinner. And here is the host of Typology, Ian Cron.
Hey, Typology Tribe, Ian Morgan Cron here. Welcome again to Typology, the podcast in which we explore the mystery of the human personality and the human adventure through the lens of the Enneagram. Today, I want to begin with a poem. I'm a big believer in reading poetry as a spiritual discipline. And this is a lovely poem called The House of Belonging. And it's written by a wonderful UK poet named David Whyte. He writes, I awoke this morning in the gold light, turning this way and that, thinking for a moment it was one day like any other. But the veil had gone from my darkened heart, and I thought it must have been the quiet candlelight that filled my room. It must have been the first easy rhythm with which I breathed myself to sleep. It must have been the prayer I said, speaking to the otherness of the night. And I thought, this is the good day you could meet your love. This is the gray day someone close to you could die. This is the day you realize how easily the thread is broken between this world and the next. And I found myself sitting up in the quiet pathway of light, the tawny, close-grained cedar burning round me like fire, and all the angels of this housely heaven ascending through the first roof of light the sun has made. This is the bright home in which I live. This is where I ask my friends to come. This is where I want to love all the things it has taken me so long to learn to love. This is the temple of my adult aloneness, and I belong to that aloneness as I belong to my life. There is no house like the house of belonging. This is a wonderful introduction to our two guests who are on the show today, Chris and Julie Bennett, Enneagram 8, Enneagram 9, authors of the new book, Fighting for Family, The Relentless Pursuit of Building Belonging. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Already got me crying over here. Wow.
Yeah, that was good.
So powerful. Thanks for having us.
Well, we are delighted that you're here. We're going to be talking all about belonging today, as you understand it. And but before we do, tell us how you learned about the Enneagram and tell us about your discovery of your types.
You know, we have a lot of friends that have taken deep dives, and we'll find ourselves in conversations at dinner, and it'll just come up, hey, what's your Enneagram? And it made me go, what is my Enneagram? And I was very confused by myself for a very long time. And honestly, just I would say over the last year, as I started diving in a little bit more, it actually helps me understand myself a whole lot better. I think Jules is probably a little more schooled than me.
Yeah, well, being an 8, I like to tell him what number he was, like a lot before he realized.
Very
Well, I'll just
helpful.
tell you what number you are.
Very
Like,
helpful.
which is supposedly breaking the rules because you want people to discover it themselves. But yeah, so yeah, I'd say the last couple of years, it's been really helpful for us in writing the book. That long process we went through, and just our story of a real kind of dramatic move and cancer battles, a new city with 4 kids, like all of these things we went through as a family with 4 kids really made us go, wait a second, let's kind of look in, how can we relate to each other better through all the stuff we're going through.
So, Chris, you're a 9 on the Enneagram.
Yes, sir.
And the peacemaker. I'm married to a 9. So you're welcome, Julie. It's one of the best things in the world.
I agree.
It is the best. They are the best when they are at their best. Tell me, did the Enneagram illuminate anything about you that surprised you?
That's a really good question. I think I've always appreciated that I had a high value for peace. What I think it made me realize was that I would bypass my own pain and grief for the sake of others to be in peace around me. And, we share a lot of our journey throughout the book. And even we went through an affair year 3. And I found myself, of our marriage. And it took me years to kind of look back of how, I was very quick to forgive and I was very quick to get over it and very quick to move on and make sure Julie was okay and make sure at that time I was pastoring a church, make sure everybody else was okay. And on the inside, violating my own process. And honestly, it's just been in the last, that was 20 years ago that happened, but it's just been the last few years ago that I really began to say, you know what? I don't know if I ever gave myself permission to get at peace within myself for the sake of peace of those around me and the environment. And because I so value a peaceful environment, I don't think I didn't want to feel a lack of peace on the inside because it would impact the environment I was trying to create around me. So I think that's probably been the biggest thing, is giving myself permission to work through my own state of being on the inside of me, even if it's not at the expense of others, but almost making it a priority.
So you mentioned pain, which is a generic word, not a bad word, just a generic word. Specifically, what was the feeling you were trying to bypass?
Anger.
And so did you get in touch with that anger at that point?
I can certainly say, Julie would even reflect of, when she had the affair year 3, she was almost upset that I didn't get more angry. It was like I was so quick to forgive the other person, so quick to forgive her, which looks very knowable and it looks very godly. And there's a true part of that. Like I really can say, no, I did forgive. But I think I've gone back of, why didn't I feel anger? And so I think as I've gotten older and we've gone through other pain and ministry and feeling, mistreated and abused by leaders and things like that, I never wanted to use the word anger. I would always say, well, that wasn't their intention, and believe the best. And I would just say, really in the last 2 to 3 years, I've started to get more in touch with, anger is actually an emotion that is invited in Scripture. It's an emotion that Jesus expressed. And I needed to get in touch with that part of it.
So did you get in touch with it?
Probably not. We have a guy that's part of our community, and a few weeks ago we were at breakfast and he said, we're talking about personalities. He goes, so what makes you angry? And I was like,
he couldn't answer. It was nuts.
I literally couldn't. And again, I wasn't like, I'm so humble, I'm so loving, and I'm so kind. I'm trying to figure out, why can't I even put a name or my finger on what actually makes me angry?
So, Julie, here's a question for you. Did you find in those moments that you were frustrated that Chris wasn't getting angry with you?
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I remember going, you should have knocked the guy out, slashed the tires, and because I'm so strong, especially then, that was 23 years ago, 22 years ago. Then I was a very unhealthy 8, and I think my husband was just hanging on to the, like, this is why I married you. Like, I see the healthy parts of who you are and it's amazing. And I was like, wait a second. And so it actually, I think, perpetuated more shame internally. And I'm not putting that on him by any means.
Right.
Anyway, we've been through a lot of therapy. I have. I've been through more therapy than he has. I need more therapy, and I'm okay to admit that. But I realized that actually I internalized more shame because it was weird. And I don't know why, but it was almost like if you would have kind of given me a little bit more of what I deserved or what I thought I deserved, right or wrong. I'm not saying that's the right way to think, then maybe I wouldn't feel so bad or something. And it seems a little twisted, but that's how I felt back then. It actually took me a few years down the road when we were healing that I felt bitter about it. Bitter. Yes. Yeah. And so that creeps up now for us in a healthy marriage where restoration has been incredible 20 years later. It creeps up in that passive aggressive, which, you can hear about in an unhealthy 9, a passive aggressive way of trying to tell me something. And I'm like, that is the ultimate trigger. Like right now, I feel myself just getting mad thinking about it. We got in a big old fight the other day. We should talk about that. But we got in this huge fight where I was like, oh, it's hitting on that thing from years ago that just reminds me that I've done something wrong. You're not just going out and saying it. Lose my shabizzles. Just like.
So how did you resolve that?
Like the recent conflict?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we've gotten better at is true confession. We're going to tell the truth and we're going to try and actually honor the space to hear you out and talk about how that made me feel or where it was coming from. I mean, we are practicing this 23 years into marriage, but I will say that has been the health. Is Julie is more of a reactor. And so because I so value peace, my trigger will be, hey, if you're reacting over something that seems so small, but the reality is, it hit on something much deeper, that was just a trigger. So I think that's been the biggest growth point for us is letting each other just tell the truth about how we felt or how it impacted one another, ideally without being defensive. That doesn't always work.
Yeah, it's kind of like I heard you describing it on one of your podcasts when you were talking about during COVID. If an 8 comes into the room and let's say a 9 is sitting there enjoying a television show or just wanting to read or whatever. And if Chris is doing that and I come in and I'm like, boom, I'm taking up way too much space in the room and I'm just coming in with all my stuff. It's like, whoa, take it down just a notch. I was actually enjoying a moment and doesn't mean they're not important. But if you take that scenario into a fight or a marital conversation, it's like, it is very hard for me that after I feel a sense of shame, although that wasn't his intention, it was a passive aggressive way, a comment or whatever, it throws me, which I realize that is quite an area. That is the shame. For a lot of people, it's fear, but shame is such a trigger. It's the top negative emotion that I'm going to feel on a regular basis. I would say majority of people that I ask when we walk through things like confession, repentance, transformation, it's fear, but mine is shame, which could come from fear and different stuff like that, which again, as an 8, I'm going to control. So the only way to control that environment is that moment is to take up all the space possible. And it's like, actually, please don't talk, Julie. I need you to be quiet. I'm actually going to not be quiet because I feel so much shame by your comments. And this is escalating. So a 9 is like, shut it down. We need to give a moment. And I'm like, see, clearly I'm getting loud just talking about it. I'm thinking, and I'm scooting closer to this screen. But yeah.
Well, I mean, look, we tend to teach and provide what our partners lack, right? So 8s bring to 9s like a lot of self-confidence and self-assertion and honesty and boldness, while 9s can teach 8s which battles are worth fighting for and how to dial back their surfeit of life force energy, which is pretty intense, right? In stress, we know that 8s go to 5 and 6s go to the low side of 6. But in the initial part, we go to the low side of our own number, right? We don't just go the moment stress shows up. We don't go leaping right to our stress point. We kind of go through the resources at the low end of our own number before we take off to try and find some somewhere else. So in initial phases of stress, like 8s tend oftentimes in a relationship with nines to resent what they perceive as the nine's kind of sleepy, unresponsive,
Wow.
obstructive, somewhat passive aggressive energy.
Yes.
Right? Oh, I got a big yes out of that one. Yes.
Well, because he has no 8 in him. He's a full wing 9. Wing 1. And I'm a pretty strong 7. So
So he
no.
has some 8. He does have some 8 because he's got 2 wings. It just may be very light.
Oh, that's right. It's not just one wing.
No, he has a dominant wing.
Tell her, Ian. Tell her.
Dominant. I think that's what I meant
It's
to
a
say.
dominant wing, but actually he could stand to develop that other wing so he doesn't fly in circles, we like to say. If you only have one wing, you fly in circles. So you need both. He can definitely tap into that 8. It's just going back to what I was saying, that the 8 can get like frustrated that the 9 seems asleep to their own anger and asleep to their own life force. And then they become even more provocative then. The 8 will then keep escalating to try and wake the 9 up.
Basically, you're talking about our fight. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, to get a reaction, right? Like I'm going to get a reaction, right? And then the problem is then the 9, the more aggressive the 8 becomes, increasingly becomes unresponsive and even more withdrawn.
Yes.
So now you're into a vicious, what we call an unvirtuous cycle. You're cycling out, So it sounds like this value on honesty and this value on creating a space in which there can be openness and talking is really important because, Julie, the more you attack, the more withdrawn Chris will get.
Right.
Well, and I think
Typically.
where the understanding of the numbers has been helpful. Even, we wrote this book about how messy family is. Family is a trigger word for so many people. We all have a wound or a pain, at least most people we've met, from their own family or something that was meant to be family for them. And I think the context of like one of our biggest values as a family is honor, is that we're going to value each other's voice. We're going to value each other's perspectives. We're going to give space and room to bring who you are, and we're going to honor that in each other. And so, I think God does that very intentionally as he puts us with people that are very different than us. But if we don't understand honor and we don't understand love and we can't appreciate the differences, what was meant to be a strength together actually becomes a tension and a fight. Mm-hmm. And so I think our evolution in our own marriage has been, if I am in my flesh or whatever word you want to use, I will see her differences as a threat. If I'm seeing it through the eyes of love and honor, I will see it as a strength and a value. And I can see, well, when conflict comes, is we're not seeing each other rightly, we're not appreciating our unique differences. But when we're at our best is when Julie brings who she is, I bring who I am. We were doing a conference this weekend in New York, a relationships conference, and it's like the dance. We've been dancing for 23 years. We still step on each other's feet, less than we used to. But man, when we're working together and there's honor, it's powerful together.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp.
Hey, Anthony, Annie and I just moved back to Nashville, right?
Absolutely. It's great to have you back, and I can't wait till we see each other more often.
Well, me too, brother. But with the stress of the move and so much to do right now, I got to tell you, I feel a little overwhelmed.
Oh, man, we all carry around different stressors, and moving is one of the really big ones.
Now, I know what's making me uneasy right now, right? So I'm able to put some boundaries in place. I'm sticking with my workout routine. I'm taking a break from unpacking on a regular basis. But let's face it, some people aren't able to identify their stressors. That's where therapy comes in. A good therapist provides a safe place to not only figure out what's weighing you down, but how to work through it so you can be the best version of you. And with BetterHelp's online therapy, you don't have the added pressure of working in a trip to the therapist's office. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. So if you've got something you're struggling with, I encourage you to check out BetterHelp.com. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/typologypodcast today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/typologypodcast. So I want to go back to a question that I asked you a minute ago. Did you revisit the anger?
Did I?
Yes, about the affair. Did you go back and revisit the anger and let it have its way with you?
It's a good question. I would say that I did, but I don't remember feeling the anger.
Mm-hmm.
So I could look back and go, why wasn't I more angry? I remember a moment, and I'll be extremely vulnerable. There was a encounter with this person that was on the other part of this affair. And I remember he was so embarrassed when he saw me. And his response was, hit me in the face. Like he wanted me to hit him. And I didn't. And I've many times gone, man, that was my shot. Like, why didn't I? Why didn't I? And I think the answer was, well, that's not the loving thing to do. You forgive and you move on. And I, again, whether I should have or shouldn't have hit him, there was something in me that didn't feel permission to feel that kind of anger.
But did you feel the anger? I feel like you're still not answering the question.
I don't think I did. I think my answer is no.
So what's interesting is every type has a way of rationalizing its behavior, right? So a 1 might say, in response to their being, let's say, if they're on a perfectionist run or something like that, well, I'm just a good person. And a 2 might say, I'm just a loving person. A 3 might say, I'm just a productive, busy person. A 4 might say, oh, I'm a creative,
Right.
Or a 5 might say, oh, I'm just curious and I want to know everything. And so we kind of like sometimes paint unhealthy behavior in rationalized, idealized language. We wrap it, you know what I'm saying? And a 9 sometimes will say, I'm just a peaceful, easygoing person, right? But sometimes with the 9 and the 1 and all the types, when they idealize their behavior, are doing is there's a bit of a bypass happening there, right? Which is to say, yes, and you're avoiding conflict,
Right.
or yes, and you're so afraid of, you are so guarding internal peace that it's selfish.
Yeah.
Like I've lived with 2 9s. I have a daughter who's a 9. I got a wife who's a 9. And sometimes what looks like easygoing, sweet, blah, 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 is actually selfishness wrapped in that. Do you know what I'm saying? Because because it's selfish because you're not dealing with the truth with me. You're just, it's self-interested. It's because you want internal and external peace.
Right.
And so I'm oftentimes like, I'm a 4, right? And so sometimes I can say, well, I'm a complicated person. That's a good 4 thing to say, I'm just a complicated person. And it's like, no, you're a pain in the ass. And there's a difference.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like you're just being a pain in the ass. You're being a precious pain in the ass.
Yeah.
You're just you're just being precious about everything. And
That's our oldest
honestly, and so sometimes it's just good to know, like sometimes like we're complicated, right? Like sometimes it is because 9s are fundamentally kind of sweet people. They're sweet. There's a kind of goodness to 9s, a guileless kind of sweetness to 9s. But sometimes when it's overplayed or when the 9 is a little delusional, they're wrapping sort of selfish intentions in idealized language, of like, I'm just a sweet, nice, easygoing person. It's like, no, actually, that's not what you're being right now. So this is sort of kind of a gift the Enneagram gives us, is unfortunate truths, but we need those truths in order to be true selves.
How do you see that playing out long-term in a marriage? So we've been together, almost 24 years this summer, an 8 and a 9. If you don't ever if a 9 specifically doesn't ever allow themselves to be angry, what's going to be the biggest issue?
Well, they let themselves be angry, but it's almost like, they're just not in touch with it. You know what I mean? Like they're not feeling it. It's not embodied. It's not expressed. It's like they're asleep to the anger, right? Like 8's anger, we say, goes outward towards other people. It radiates externally. 1's, it radiates internally back at themselves. But for the 9, it's like, what anger? I don't even know what you're talking about. Like I never get angry. Like what you just said, Chris. It's like I don't know what I'm angry about. You know what I'm saying? Like if you ask me what I'm angry about, there's plenty. I don't know. Just put on the news. I'll get angry pretty quick. But to your question, Julie, maybe I'd answer it with a question like, Chris, where are you right now on the journey to discovering who you are? And here's the second part of the question. And have you found your voice yet?
Wow. I pastor a local church, and I've had this, interesting. Was at this leaders gathering this weekend, and so many of the other senior pastors that I know and meet that lead large churches, whatever that even means, who cares, but tend to be threes. And I am such a, people say, oh, you're such a pastor, you're such a pastor. And so our church feels loved and cared for and very welcomed, and I'm thankful for that. There's wonderful things about that, but I'm just, I think, been diving in, going. I was reading the lines to that Sleeping at Last, the Enneagram album, and he just said, it looks like empathy to understand all sides, but I'm trying to find myself through someone else's eyes, and I just am continually live. Inner conflict would be kind of the phrase I would think, where it's like I will minimize myself for the sake of others. And it looks like humility. Wow, man, they just get low. But internally, I'm actually just diminishing or minimizing myself. I don't want to look too big. I don't want to be like I'm too great, or that I'm think I'm too this. And yet on the inside, I want to do something great and super impactful. But on the outside, it's like, but it's not about me, and I don't want to do anything that big, and it doesn't really matter. And I don't need the applause and praise.
Do you think that's been shaped by being married to me at all? Because I'm so big and loud a lot of times.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Not necessarily, but potentially.
One of the thoughts that I'm having as I'm listening to you is, and I've done a lot of work in this area, but Dr. Chip Dodd talks about anger, and he says anger is the most vulnerable feeling because it reveals what you truly care about. And I can see where Julie expressed her hurt by you not being, because she's so in touch with anger, by you not expressing more anger over the situation, over the affair. He also says the gift of anger is passion. And we tend to, think of anger as only in the negative. But if you don't get in touch with your anger, and this is kind of what I hear you saying now, then you can't get in touch with the gift of it, which is passion, which is what allows you to tap into what you're made for, which would allow you then, because talking about faith, you're talking about your faith. Jesus said, I'm the light of the world. Then he turned to his disciples and he said, what? He said, you're the light of the world. And you're struggling sort of with the sense of, well, I don't want to get too big, which to me, my fear when I hear you say that is, oh man, what if that means you don't actually reach the thing you were made, to reach for, because you can't get in touch with the anger.
There's a kind of, 8s are almost too plugged into the life energy.
That's true.
Right. Like you're 204, you're 240 volts. And it's like, sometimes it's overly plugged into instinctual energy.
Yeah.
9s are not plugged in enough.
Right.
Right. So one needs to come up. The other one needs to be stewarded, and when you were talking, Julie, about walking in a room, okay, how much do I have to dial this back? Because it's all this life instinct. It's like instinctual energy just flying into the room, right?
Yeah.
Like, and splattering.
Right? The anger or the joy, right?
Right. It's just big. It's just big life energy. And the 9 is smaller. It's like we used to say that 8s leave a wake like an aircraft carrier, and 9s like a canoe. It's like, well,
Great.
and one could afford to be a little bigger and one could afford to be a little smaller. But I think it's a matter of who's in charge. Is your personality in charge, or are you in charge?
That's good.
Like, so when you're in charge, you have agency to say, I need to get smaller here, or more right sized. And and for you, Chris, that might mean becoming bigger. And this is going back to the question I asked. Where are you on the journey of discovering who you are, and have you found your voice yet? That's a big question for 9s. Like, you're very other referencing. So you're always sort of focusing on the needs and what's happening with others, but almost kind of blind to yourself.
Yep.
So sometimes we say that 9s can see through the eyes of every other type except their own.
Yeah. One thing I would add to that is, you said earlier, this is to what Ian was saying. You said, I didn't want to do that because I'm concerned about disrupting others' peace. And that really the 9, it's more about disrupting their own peace.
Yes.
It's not so much about the peace of others. It's your own personal peace that you're trying to protect.
I think that's true. 2 weeks ago, I get up early before my kids. I get up an hour or so early. Like usually I'm 5:30, get up, make my coffee.
I'm sleeping.
Have my spot I'm sitting on, and I've spent an hour just in stillness and silence. I'm reading Henry Now, and I'm getting my mind decluttered for the day. And then when Julie wakes up, it's the 10 things that have to get done and have I done. And it's like a shock to the system. It's like a cold plunge of my soul. It's like, oh boy, hold on. And I found myself like, hey, Julie, I need a minute. She wakes up like that. And I've just dialed it down. So I'm just, right? That happened the other day.
Yes, I do want to, this is an 8, defend myself just a little bit to say I'm really growing. I'm taking mindful breaths in bed before I get out. No, it's true.
Let's take a few more.
That's my MO. Or he'll be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I've been laying in bed for 30 minutes, actually taking deep breaths and, reading my poems or whatever I'm doing. And he's like, yeah, but you just came out here and didn't do that.
Coming in hot.
Well, I mean, we're all learning how to do the dance, and learning to try to move through the world with less friction, leaving fewer sparks and rubs, but to move through it with more ease. And also, to create a more loving and just planet, that's just what we want to be about, And part of our Enneagram work is becoming the kind of people who are disseminating that kind of energy to the world. Like that's what we're giving away, but it takes a second. And, marriage is like, marriage is like the crucible of sanctification, man. Kids and marriage, like yes. Nothing will shape you quite like that, because there's no escaping, hopefully, eventually. So it is an amazing crucible. But now, Chris, I'm going to ask you again. Have you? Where are you on the journey of discovering who you are, and have you found your voice yet?
I don't think I think I'm finding it, but I was literally going to end with this question, say, what would you tell me? Does it look like to begin to really dive in to discover my voice? Or am I putting the question on you that I need to answer?
Are you deflecting again? What are you doing?
No. Actually, you went frozen for just a second. Julie, I want you to answer that question for Chris. How does Chris because 8s have a voice. Yeah. How would you counsel someone to find their own voice and discover who they are?
It seems way too simple, but for me, it's just, I get emotional saying it. It's learning to tell myself the truth about how I feel about myself has been the only way for me to be honest with how I really feel with Julie. Just me and Julie, how do I feel about myself? Not as like a great therapy thing to do, like, oh, I should do that. Like really truth telling me. And that is, wow, what was my biggest negative emotion that I come back to? Oh, it's this, shame. Why am I doing that? And really asking those questions for me personally, I go to God. So I have a relationship where I'm able to okay, I've got to hear what you say about me. And so that's how I'm personally processing, life. And as I've just allowed myself to not feel bad, that I feel bad about myself in some areas. It gave me breath again. So I don't know. I think that for Chris, he might be like, I don't know, I really like myself, but I think really getting under the hood of that, shame is just the check engine light. It is like the signal that's like, open the hood. And if I don't, I am angry and I'm blown through and I'm hurting people with my words or my actions. And so I have to just open the hood, I don't feel like it, but just open it. And then I can actually receive what's true. And then I can transform and then repeat. So it's the only way for me. I've tried a lot of things. I was like, wow, this is what God made me to do, is just hear why I'm so awesomely made. And he's really like, God's really wild about who I am on my worst day even. And so I think that's what's beautiful about the Enneagram, is that it's this mosaic of what makes us so beautiful. It's not just a cool idea and a cool podcast you have. It's literally back to belonging. You know, how you started this with that beautiful poem is like, we belong when we understand first ourselves and each other, which seems really simple and it's really hard. That's why we've never arrived. Right. So, but I repeat it. I would stall out a lot because I would stop like, what's wrong with me? And especially the 8, I'm intense with myself. I'm just as intense with my own heart that I am with other people.
Yeah.
And that has been the most damaging thing, is being tender with me. And not hating that I'm too much. I right now feel emotion coming when even saying that. If Chris ever uses the word that's too much, I'm done.
Or you're being too intense.
Or you're being too intense. Even if it was gently said, it was so not a big deal. It is still a painful thing that I'm working through, because our life has been in ministry. We were out of it for 5 years, battling cancer and doing lots of stuff, never thinking we'd be in the context of church truly again. But be careful what you say you'll never do again. But, you know, and so it is such a deep unwinding for me so I'm getting away from your question, but just, I think it's like creating space to feel safe with me. I can't love other people well, or my husband or my kids, if not. And then I just am in a spiral of shame that's really uncomfortable. And I just want to be another number, which is not good. And
Can I trade numbers or no?
Can I trade number? I mean, but I grew up feeling that way, right? So what makes me suffer is the fear. It's like judgment and being misunderstood in unresolved relationships. So anytime in the context where we have an amazing marriage and we've come so far and we have great kids and we try to create lots of space for not being okay and hard, especially in our world, when you mean the church world, like, we are going to allow mess. It's the only thing we can all relate to. So we've all been a mess, you know? So, but I don't do that for myself. So anyway, I could keep talking about that. But.
So good. Dang.
The following ad is sponsored by Pets Best Insurance Services. Your pet is your bestie, your therapist, your preferred match. It's easy to love them, even when they sneak your snacks. It's easy to protect them, too, with pet insurance coverage from Pets Best. Because it's all fun and games until they chew on something they shouldn't. With perfect timing, Pets Best helps protect your furry friend and your budget from this imperfect world. Get up to 90% on eligible vet bills for less than $1 a day. Find your perfect match at PetsBest.com. Pet insurance products offered and administered by Pets Best Insurance Services, LLC, are underwritten by American Pet Insurance Company or Independence American Insurance Company. For all terms, visit PetsBest.com/policy.
Fall is in the air, and that cooler weather calls for an update in your skincare. Moisturizing is key to keeping wrinkles at bay. That's why we need a skincare routine that's easy, fast, and gives us results. Plus, what if your products had thousands of 5-star reviews, were natural and affordable? Well, say hello to Dime Beauty. Dime Beauty is clean, high-end skincare that is affordable, and it really works. Not sure where to start? I highly recommend the Work System. It's everything you need in one powerful package. Take out the guesswork with a proven routine that includes a gentle yet effective cleanser, a super skin toner, 2 incredible serums, and 2 luxurious moisturizers. See what everyone is raving about. From serum sets to the always sold-out retinol alternative TBT cream, you'll find your perfect skincare match. Dime has over 2 million happy customers, and their product reviews are literally 5 stars. Love your skin again. Go to dimebeautyco.com and unlock your discount. That's dimebeautyco.com. That's dimebeautyco.com.
Well, it's a good segue into talking a little bit about the book, because it's interesting. I was thinking about the topic of belonging, fighting for family, the family you've been given and the family that you choose. Thinking about, how different types can cultivate belonging, and I think some types are more natural at it than others, When you talk about belonging in your new book, what is it you mean? Like, belonging is like when people use the word "the work." Oh, I'm doing the work. It's like, what do you mean when you say that? Like, what do you mean by belonging?
Yeah, we had this moment during COVID where we invited some of our friends over who were singles. They were in their 20s and 30s. And we were basically saying, we've been together most of our life and we don't know what it's like to not have your own family in that way, but kind of getting around this idea of chosen family and your found family. And just said, what does it look like to build family like as a single? And one of our friends said something that it just so impacted us, that really impacted some of the way we wrote the book. She just said, belonging is not just something that you find, belonging is something that you bring. Mm-hmm. And I remember us kind of going, hang on, can you say it again? And what do you mean? And I think some of this comes back to understanding ourselves. And even what Julie is saying is accepting ourselves. Is if somebody doesn't believe they're worth being loved because of rejection, pain, whatever the background, it's easy to project that on any person you meet, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that you don't feel like you belong anywhere, and because you just expect to get rejected wherever you go. So coming back to the starting place, is saying, no, actually, I'm loved, I'm accepted, I do belong. And then saying, and I can bring, instead of waiting for belonging to come to me, which is great when it does. It's great when you get invited in. It's great when somebody chooses you, but it's that, well, what if you were third grade playing kickball and no one picked you? Those feelings of rejection that can come at a very young age. Is we've just even said, okay, belonging is a vulnerable thing. You're putting yourself out there with the risk of being accepted or being rejected. And so I think taking the risk is one thing, is to put yourself out there, which is intentionality, and then maybe reaching out to someone to build something right where you are, to go to lunch, to go to coffee, to create a connection. Sometimes that's just the first step, is you have to be willing to take the risk. And, when we were writing this, or right around the time her second battle with cancer started, and, COVID hits and everybody's isolated and disconnected, and depression skyrocketing and suicides going up. And then, a year and a half ago, I heard a podcast you were on, you did with Max Lucado. It was the U.S. Surgeon General puts out this 85-page document called Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. And that he's saying basically it's the greatest health threat we are facing. So, I think what we encourage people to do is start where you are and take a step of inviting somebody in to experience belonging. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, to all that you're saying, it's about a deep belief that everyone truly matters. And even going back to you asking me that question, that belief that I'm okay with being the way I was created is like a starting place, but there's lots of barriers to why I might not believe that and feel that. And so everything about the heart of family, we get hurt the most in family, but we're also healed the most. There's a whole statistic about like community, like, I don't know, you might know that. I can't remember the reference to that, but right now, that if belonging is about a deep belief that we all really matter, then how do we move forward in that? What are those barriers that get in the way? And so we've just been on such a long journey. And again, we don't come as experts. This whole book was about like, we're growing and learning, and our family's always tried to take that posture of like, what are the things that have gotten in the way? And that if we really matter, it's worth removing them and, continuing to move towards that.
So here's a thought. Like, Chris, just going back to our earlier conversation, right? Like, I think, here I go, Anthony. He never can get through a podcast without talking about his 12-step experience. But I'm like, I go to like 4 or 5 12-step meetings a week, right? Mm-hmm. And if for nothing else, it's like, for me, those communities are like everything I hoped church would be, right?
Yeah.
Like without, there's no politics, there's no boards, there's nobody's actually in charge. And it's kind of crazy how it works. But one of the things that's cool about it is that you get to bring all of you, like it's like pretty much in a 12-step meeting, all of you is welcome. Right. Yeah. And I think in order to belong, many of us go into communities, whether they're churches or social groups or whatever, thinking and unconsciously amputating parts of who we are in order to achieve a sense of belonging. But it's a false belonging, right? Like I've got to cut off parts of my identity to fit in here. So it's not really belonging. It's like a strange kind of accommodating and like masking. And so when you get into what we call in 12-step rooms, they call it the gift of desperation. When you're desperate, and like you are at the bottom, And it's like, I got to bring all of me into this room because I'm not going to get well, right? I think for nines, like Chris, like what has to be for belonging to happen for you, it would seem, or for nines, would be to bring all of you, including your opinions, your preferences, your viewpoints, your anger, your all of it has to be welcome, or you're not really experiencing belongingness. It's some sort of it's something else, but it's not belongingness, right?
Yeah.
And Julie, what do you think it is that you have to bring in order for you to experience as an 8, or what do you think 8s need to bring? So maybe not just personal to you, but in order for you to experience belongingness, what do you have to bring?
I mean, usually, like, if I feel heard, I'm good. You don't have to pick my idea. You don't have to do it. You don't have to like it. But I'm like, thanks for hearing me out.
Yeah.
And then, but if I don't feel heard, that's when the control kicks in of like, I need to self-protect because it's not safe because I couldn't bring, if all of me really matters, but I had to cut off my arm and my leg to be in the space, then screw you. Excuse me.
Right. Yeah.
Middle finger and now this. So it's that, like, because if my fear is judgment, that's mine personally as an 8, being misunderstood, to me it's like, here's all of me, but because I've been hurt by bringing all of me so much, that it's like self-protection. So really, I'm just going to stick my fingers in today, and then here's my head and leave the rest. So I've had to learn to go, oh my gosh, kind of to what you said. I think this 12-step, what you're mentioning is so powerful. And that's why community spaces, churches have to look more like that. I think that's why a lot of them that don't look like are getting dismantled, which is another conversation for another time. But there's something, because it only works when the whole self is able to be there, even when it's messy and like broken. Again, and when we do, it's probably what you experience is, oh my gosh, like I feel normal. And it diffuses judgment, which is the very thing that doesn't allow belonging to manifest powerfully in our lives. And so that would be, I just want to feel heard. Which is why when I'm too much is when I'm not respecting the 9, when I'm not respecting Chris going, I need to get all of me out right now. And he's like, yeah, maybe like an hour, like right now, And so that's where I have to go. It's also not about me getting my 2 cents in all the time. So it's either I'm too much or I'm not enough. So in our context that we've been in, the cultural church context and different leadership type of scenarios, I learned how to manage like a master, but all I did was just live fragmented, and compartmentalized. So anyway, that's
I think so, Chris, like you have to cultivate belonging in yourself, and also to extend it to others, have to bring your whole self, including your anger. And I'd say you, Julie, would have to bring your whole self, including your vulnerability. And if you're an 8, then you typically confuse vulnerability with weakness. And that may be something that, because you've done a lot of work, is not so much the case anymore, but which is great. But I think that's just a lesson for 8s and 9s in general, like, I think that's belonging is when you get to bring your whole self to the table. That's when you can really experience belonging, when the whole self is welcome at the table. Otherwise, you're just a member, but you're not, that's different than belonging.
I think that's been the thing that in this past year, we started doing more gatherings around the table and in our home. And even as we were doing book tour stuff, trying to create it, doing it around the table, we call it fam to table dinners. And when I look at, the life of Jesus, it was like he came and gathered around the people that had no belonging. It was literally the outcast of society, and it was the religious ones that would judge him for it. And, I saw one scholar say, Jesus got killed for who he had dinner with. And in one sense, it's true, because his rebuttal was, this is who I came for. I didn't come for the healthy. I came for the sick. I didn't come for the righteous. I came for the unrighteous. And I think as we're on our journey of saying, the church is meant to reflect what Jesus is really like, which means it has to be that place that people, to your point, starting with us, can bring our full belonging and won't be judged for it.
That's why you can sit around the table and be every different number, because that's how it was intended. It's not based on what you believe, your political preferences, your religion, your whatever. It is about the human in front of you that was created, for belong with one another. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's so interesting doing like out of these corporate workshops that I do, facilitating these sometimes 2 day long things with people that work with each other day in and day out. And when you see the lights go on in their eyes and they realize, oh, well, not only does this person have an experience of life that is utterly different than mine, but their gifts that they bring to the table are absolutely essential for our success.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's not one number on the Enneagram I would want the world to be without.
Yeah. It's so good. Yep.
And if we can bring that kind of love and tolerance to the table, and not just tolerance, but acceptance, and acceptance doesn't necessarily mean endorsement,
Yes,
right?
totally.
Like, because sometimes I can accept people and also not endorse their behavior sometimes,
Totally.
that's
100%.
a different, but at the same time, to be able to receive people at the table as they are without making any demands that they be anything but what they are, that's kind of a nice way to move through life.
It is.
Yeah, agreement is not a prerequisite to love. And I think we live in a culture that is almost forcing that if you don't agree with me, it's not love, it's hate. And I just don't think that.
Yes. Well, guys, this passion around the topic, it's born out of your own suffering. It's born out of your own experience. What is it about belonging that has you so passionate? Why are you so passionate about this topic?
I'll say two things, and I'll give one. The verse that I go back to all the time is Psalm 68, 5-6, where it says, "Father to the fatherless, defender of widows, God sits the lonely in families." And I think the more we understand his heart as a father, his eyes are roaming, looking for those who have no place of belonging. It's Jesus leaving the 99 for the one, but when he finds the one, he brings the one to the 99. He brings them into a place of belonging and community. So I think it is at the core of the gospel message, and who God is as a father is he wants everybody to experience the longing that everybody has that he put inside of them for family. And then I think through our own experiences and walking with people for 25 years, we've often opened up our home to people that came from broken homes, and we didn't always do it perfectly. And sometimes we crossed our own boundaries and didn't make our marriage a priority at times, but we have always had a passion for finding those that didn't know that power, that the healing that can come in the context of a healthy community and family. So I think we're just addicted because we've seen what it does when somebody finds it.
When we moved to a new city, when everything fell apart, we thought we were coming into we've just been through the hardest part of life and this stretch of our family and what we yeah. And we came to LA, and then all hell broke loose. And we had a decision to make on whether we stayed, and moved 20 times in 6.5 months. I did chemo, and it was crazy. And then I relapsed when COVID hit. So there was a lot of this, more than ever. And then this book came to us. We weren't planning on writing a book. And there was something that was building us, what I was going, man, people that helped me, that was not just in my church. I would say during all of that hard, I began to feel a sense of belonging that I had never experienced before. And I had been in ministry and groups, and I have led things, and I've done all this stuff. And I had been at the highest highs of feeling loved and the very bottom. And when I experienced it was when people were different than me, and their likenesses and our differences, that I could discover who I was. Even when I couldn't give an inch, people would give me their inches. It was those moments of life, and for our family as a whole, that changed us forever. And then when this opportunity came, I thought, we just got to write about it. We got to tell our story and then talk about what we're learning, and that we still have a long way to go, because everybody's worth it.
Yeah.
And a group of 14 women during COVID, or right before COVID, when I was first diagnosed, and I had my backpack of all the self-protection and all the no. And I sat in a group of 14 women who are every bit of the Enneagram was on in that room. And I thought, this can't work. This is a bunch of women, strong women who've done some pretty amazing things in life. And we all centered around a lot of things. We're talking different political views, vaccine views, religious views, personalities, nationalities. And I watched it work, and it developed in me what true sincere love was. I was like, We can do this. Like, no matter what we go through, like, the world's got to taste this. And it was those moments that just moved us to go, I got to discover people more. And I want to sit around the table with them. If enemies can come to some commonality, there's this whole story and statistic on it. And like, if you put your hand in the same chip bowl or the bread bowl and something is diffused by that, then let's do that, because the world is the most divisive it's ever been. And so, yeah, I leave it
Beautiful.
at that.
Guys, what a rich conversation. Thank you. I'm talking to our new friends, Chris and Julie Bennett, authors of this beautiful new book, Fighting for Family, The Relentless Pursuit of Building Belonging. Guys, thanks for being on the show and for sharing your passion for creating environments and relationships where people can feel their whole self belonging. I know firsthand just how important it is to have that sense. But let me ask you this one last question. Belonging, we tend to think is like, you'll hear people say this about churches or about 12-step groups or whatever. Oh, they weren't very welcoming and they weren't very, I didn't really feel like I belonged. But how does a person cultivate an innate, inherent sense that they belong regardless of whether or not they fit in? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, belonging is something that you have to know in yourself that can't be dependent on other people, right? Like, am I making sense? Like in other words, otherwise everyone else has all the power to determine whether or not I belong. How does somebody actually cultivate a sense of self that is aware of its own belongingness, its own worthiness of belonging?
Wow.
You want to?
I mean, I don't know how to answer this any other way except from my experience in knowing God and the journey that I've been on of knowing how he feels about me. And I'm a very performative person, and I spent years performing really well for God, and had a subconscious belief that God loved me more based upon my performance, and he withheld from me when I didn't perform as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a miserable way to live.
Yeah.
And the last 10 years, and I think so much of the undoing of all that we've been through and all the pain, people go one way or the other. Pain pushes you towards God or away from him. And I think we've tried to lean in during those times. And I think I've come back to this place of, as I reference Henry Now and this Dutch theologian that's, hero to me, all the academia of Yale and Harvard, and then him spending the last 10 years of his life working with the mentally disabled, and kind of the summation of his life saying it all comes down to being the beloved of God, and going, yeah, but, and then going, no, like that kind of is the summation of what does it mean to be the beloved of God? It means that we are loved, we are fully approved, and we are fully accepted. And I think if you don't start with that, we love because he first loved us. We can't love our neighbor if we don't love ourselves. It's not a cliche. I think there's a reality. So belonging to me starts with, I know who God is, and I believe that I'm fully accepted by him. And that gives me a security that then I don't need. Doesn't mean we don't need encouragement. It doesn't mean we don't need to be lifted up. We do. That's what community's for. But I can't live off the affirmation or the expectations or the praises of men, or it'll destroy me over time. So anyway, that's been my
Julie, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think I was just going to reference, like, I had to discover that I can only love myself because I was like first loved, and he said that. So I know that that's our belief system for sure, and that may not be everybody's belief system. But it's hard to mention it any other way. And I had to be okay to sit with myself. It's kind of back to referencing what I said earlier in the podcast. I had to go, I'm either worth being here on this earth or I'm not. And suicide is rampant. And we just lost someone to suicide a couple weeks ago, and they felt like they were a burden.
And they had a family, they had people all around them.
And you can still feel really lonely and not worth anything. But I had to go, I am not a burden. My eightness is not a burden. My really messy stuff that's still, like, I can bring my arms and legs to the table and not leave them at home. I can. And for me, it was risking. Vulnerability is a risk. Maybe waking up for you feels like a risk today, but it is like that. if I was made to risk an adventure, not just being an 8, but like I have to risk on sitting with myself. And maybe for you, it was at one point probably going to 12 step. Like it is a risk to get in another conversation with Chris that he might do this. It all is, and I want to control, right? Because I'm an 8, and it's just like, I want to risk sitting with Julie on a continual basis. It is not something that I'm going to arrive at. I really, I crashed and burned pretty hard when I got stubborn going, I've done all that. I've tried all that, but I keep risking again. And it reminds me that I am the beloved, and I have to be reminded every day.
What a wonderful place to stop. Tell people where they can learn more about the book and about you guys.
Yeah, if you go to fightingforfamily.org, it has everything about the book. You can order the book through there. I mean, you can get it on Amazon for sure, but anywhere books are sold, you can get it. And then there's opportunities to connect with us through Instagram. We're really interactive if people want to message us. Mine is at Chris Bennett 143. Julie's is at Julie Bennett _ And we'd love to connect with you.
Yeah, we love getting messages, hearing your stories. So
wonderful. Thank you, guys. Anthony Skinner.
Yes, sir.
That's another one.
Another one in the books. Thank y'all
It's
for being
another
with
one
us.
in the books. Thank you so much, guys and friends. Once again, we want to encourage you to check out Chris and Julie's new book. We're stoked about it. Fighting for Family, the relentless pursuit of building belonging. And of course, I hope you know that you belong, though we may not know you face to face by name. You belong here. May you have love, may you have joy, may you have peace, may you have healing, and may you have rest. Until next time.